So we just want to continue to pick Professor William Gumede's brain. He's, of course, an associate professor at the Wits School of Governance. He's been talking to us about a range of issues, particularly the rule of law, our structures that are in place here in South Africa, and where we have gone wrong. But I want to focus a little bit on one of the other issues that you've brought up in your views and in your opinions, basically talking about what's been happening with regard to the crime here in South Africa. And if we can focus a little bit about the story comes from, I think it was with the DA, and it was something that came out yesterday, that the passing of David Leslie, who was the victim of another farm attack, unfortunately, is just another tragic reminder of how the Free State farming community have been abandoned by the SAPS. And, you know, this is something that you have spoken to. Give us your views on this, Professor.
Yes, so it's going to be very important, if we want to restore the rule of law, and we want to deal with the disorder in the country, that we, there's a police treats all crime equally, no matter your color, or no matter your political affiliation. So that really is going to be important. And secondly, that the police actually do their job, because when the police is corrupt or ineffective and, wrong people are appointed, incompetent people are appointed to the police, incompetent people or people without the skills are getting into the police, we will have poor policing, we'll have poor detective work, and so on. So again, it starts with this issue of getting the best people into jobs. It is so important. And then, doing policing work, or whether it is, public service delivery, making it equitable to everyone in the country, no matter, whether they have the money or whether, whatever their colors are. So clearly we have seen a failure of policing in the country. Now, one of the ways that we can help restore it, we'll have to bring the community back to support the police. We have to get business to support the police and civil society to support the police. So not just because when you have a failure in the state capacity, and in this case the police, to deal with crime, the police needs help from the community, from citizens, maybe more volunteers, people with the skills to help volunteer, with police, that system that was there before 1994, I think, we have to reintroduce it where we have more volunteers helping the police. We have civil society helping the police, community members helping the police in a much more formal way than is currently is the case, until the police's capacity, is up to scratch. And then, of course, people with the skills and the talent must be appointed to the police, from the level of constables to detective to, the head of the police also.
Yeah, I mean, you've basically spoken to that for every position in government leadership. It's that choosing the right people for the job. But I just want to pick your brain. Do you honestly think that the motive behind these farm murders and the killings that have really rocked South Africa in a very fragile way, one would say, particularly with the events that have been unfolding in Senekal, in the Free State, do you think it is a race issue, or is it just lawlessness? I mean, do you really believe that there is more to it than meets the eye?
It is a combination of lawlessness on the one hand, and, potentially they may be, race in some occasions, but, lawlessness. Then the second part of it is also, the economy. People don't have jobs and opportunities, and they feel, the system is unfair. They look at, in many of the rural areas, it's, farmers and, in many towns, the only people they look to be, with an income and so on for some people. But it's a combination of all of those factors. It's not just, all out racial issue, because we also have the same thing, in the townships, where, if you are robbed, if you, hurt, or even rape, unfortunately, the police are as lackadaisical. If you don't have the money or the organized support in the country where people can protest to support you, it is unfortunately, and that is maybe, I think, the tragedy of our country right now, is because there's one hand a lack of capacity also, and then there's a collapse of the economy at the same time, and then there's also where the police and the prosecuting authorities often don't investigate all cases equally.
Yeah, which is an issue, and many people talk to that. Just finally, you speak about gated communities, and this is a conversation on itself, because we are seeing this as a very big trend in South Africa, where many people opt to live in a gated community, which, offers you security, protection, a lot of people trying to look after whatever they can, but at the same time, it is removing you from all of the socioeconomic realities that we have out in South Africa. What is it that you feel about SA communities and these groupings and gated communities? Talk to us about this as we wrap it up.
Yes, so gated communities must be looked into sort of the broader situation where, because the state has failed so at multiple levels, people are seeking out alternatives to the state, whether it is private education, because many public schools have collapsed, whether it is private hospitals because public hospitals have collapsed, whether it is people having private security because the police are being ineffective. So there is a context that we must look at gated communities. So clearly those people, and it's human nature, who have the income will try to protect himself by living in a gated community where you at least will be feel secure. That is your private security. Your children can play in the community safely. Because now very difficult if you live even in the suburbs and the townships. You can't have children cycling, for example, in the street. You can't have women walking in the street because it's so dangerous, and because of the lack of policing, effective policing. And so on. So essentially what we're seeing in the country is because the state has been lost its capacity in such an extent because of corruption and inefficiency. Many of the public services that are supposed to be delivered by the state are now being delivered by the private sector and so on. And that is why it is so alarming that many people in the ANC and in government still insist that a state must deliver certain things. I'm just thinking about our new COVID-19 economic recovery plan. There's a big emphasis there on the state to deliver, but the state don't have the capacity. A better, a more realistic plan would be to involve the private sector in combination with the state, because the state is so weak at the moment to deliver services or, to be in charge of this economic recovery plan. The state alone, we've seen it, cannot do it alone. That is, cannot do it alone because it doesn't have the capacity. That is why we use private education. Why they use security.
Professor, we need to leave it there. William Gumede, who is the author, columnist and associate professor at the Wits School of Governance, discussing a wide range of issues. But in a nutshell, what he says are the undesirable parallel states that are being run here in South Africa, that breakdown of the rule of law and uncontrolled corruption and the collapse of public service delivery. All right, let's get your weather up.